So, alright, so the individual, as like culture and like nature, also has its negative element. Jung would call that the shadow. You know, and we're going to discuss the shadow in some detail, because one of the things that Jung believed, and he kind of got this idea from Nietzsche, was that when you grow up, and maybe as a consequence of your temperament, you tend to think that some of your attributes are good and some of them are negative, you know. So you make moral judgments about them, and fair enough. So, you know, you might think, for the psychoanalysts, the two elements of human being that were commonly regarded as negative from a moral perspective were sexuality and aggression. But Jung's notion is that, well, you know, you might be someone who's modest and careful and never causes any conflict, and then we might say, well, you're a well-socialized person. But Jung's point would be, yeah, but you got no power. You've got no power. And so people are just going to roll right over you. So you better dive into that morass of sexuality and aggression and pull out those powers and integrate them into your psyche so that you can use them consciously, because without that, you're harmless. But, you know, I don't think that's a very good ambition. You know, what do you want to be when you're 30? Well, I want to be harmless. It's like, you know, really, that's what you want to be? It's like you might as well not even be if that's your goal. So, you know, this dichotomy between the positive individual and the negative individual is very, very complex, because what's positive and what's negative is not obvious from the beginning, and arbitrary judgments don't help. It's very difficult for a given individual to look at themselves and say, well, what is it about me that's actually worth developing? And I can tie this into some degree into Big Five theory. So one of the Big Five characteristics is agreeableness, eh? And people tend to think of agreeableness as a virtue, which is it's completely idiotic to think that, because every virtue has its vice. But agreeable people are sympathetic and empathetic and compassionate and polite, and those all sound like good things. But they're also part of being an Oedipal parent, by the way. But anyways, the problem with being agreeable is that people take advantage of you. And then you get resentful. So I'm sure there's a whole pile of you in here that are agreeable and resentful. You know, I'm sure you know who you are. And one of the things I would mention, and you should think about this because it'll help you a lot if you do it, is that resentment is your best friend. If something makes you resentful, do not do it. So, or there's a more sophisticated rule, which is, if something makes you resentful, there's only two possibilities. One is that you're sniveling and immature and you won't adopt your responsibilities and you're whining about it. The other is that you're being pushed around and people are attempting to enslave you. So, you want to eliminate the first possibility, right? You've got to think, well, am I just being immature and whiny about this? Is it something that people are reasonably demanding of me? And if you think that through, and maybe you talk to some people about it, and you think, no, this isn't reasonable, then the resentment is telling you, act. Act. Because otherwise, that's what you'll be. You'll end up 15 years, especially if you're married or something like that, with 8,000 things you're resentful about, and then, you know, you'll be in some kind of painful divorce that lasts for 10 years. So, better to nip it in the bud. If someone is after you to do something, and you don't feel like you're getting proper regard or proper response, or you don't think it's fair, it's like, have some courage and get a hold of your anger and use it. Doesn't mean you're right, but at least it means you can push the person hard enough so they have to engage in a dialogue with you. And you know, these are necessary skills. Like, if you cannot do this, you have to be able to say no to negotiate. You have to be able to say no, so you always want to put yourself in a position where you can do that. That's part of power. And the other thing is, do not let people push you around, because you'll get pushed right into a corner and you'll end up as a slave. And that's because there's tyranny, slavery, or negotiation. That's what you've got. Yes?
What if it's not an individual pushing you around? If there's no one to engage in a dialogue with, what if it's society as a whole?
Then you're looking at it from the wrong perspective. Your level of analysis is wrong. Because, so, you know, it is society as a whole. But what the hell good is that going to do you? You can't complain to society as a whole. You have to look for the micro manifestations that actually occur in your realm and work on those. And that's the only level of analysis you have any control over anyways. Fix the things that are within your realm of power. And what will happen as a consequence of that is that your realm of power will grow. But you start local, because like, what the hell do you know? You're 19 or 20 or whatever it is. Like, you have a scrap with society? It's like, that's just an archetypal problem. That's all it is. because you don't know enough about society to have that opinion. You know, and I'm not trying to be cynical about this. I am telling you it's an archetypal problem. You know, of course everybody who's young has a problem with society. You're all at the bottom of the bloody dominance hierarchy. Unless you count the entire rest of the world. In which case you're already in the top 1%. Right, so, you know, that's worth thinking about too. So, and, you know, if you are involved in a battle in some sense with society, you're dominated by the figure of the Great Father. The negative figure of the Great Father. You also have to, a lot of what you should do about that is increase your level of gratitude. You know, here you are. It's warm. The chair works. The floor isn't going to fall apart. Right? You're at a prestigious institution. You're well on your way to being one of the top 1% in society. You're just too damn young right now for that to happen. You're smart. You're healthy. You're good looking, except for that weird thing you're wearing around your head. So, like, you know, what the hell? Everything's good for you. So, I mean, I know there's a tyrannical element. There is. It's real. But if that's all you see, you're blinded. And that's not good. It'll warp you.